The final paper I want to discuss this week is this paper that thinks about the effect of influencer advertising disclosure regulations on consumer engagement with influencer posts. This paper, when you read through it, you're probably going to notice that it's really preliminary. And it is. It's kind of being worked on at the moment. So I had a chat with one of the co-authors a couple of weeks ago. I think maybe I'm going to present a table that might not be in the version you have, because he sent me an updated version but didn't want me to distribute it too widely. So I gave you the one that's available on his website to read over. And this paper kind of takes the idea that I mentioned at the beginning of this kind of increasing regulation about influencer advertising or influencer markets seriously and tries to quantify the effects of kind of increasing regulation on influencer marketplaces. So the motivation comes from this kind of concern and growing regulation around hidden sponsorship in posts. So this is the idea that as an influencer, I'm posting stuff on Instagram and I might not be disclosing that I'm getting paid for this because I'm not saying it's an ad or anything like that. Some countries have worried about this more than others, and they've started to increase more and more the amount of regulation about how much you have to disclose as an influencer about if it's an ad or you're getting paid, so on and so forth. And this paper is going to use that and say, well, to what extent does advertising disclosure regulations impact content engagement by kind of consumers or kind of viewers of these Instagram posts? The way they're going to do it is they're going to run a natural, they're going to utilize a natural experiment on Instagram. So let's see how that works. What they're going to use is the introduction of strict advertising disclosure laws in one country in Europe and not another. So what they're going to do, the treatment is going to be new laws passed in Germany in late 2016, kind of making disclosure about kind of is this an ad or not much stricter, and as well as kind of making the law, they show in the paper that this is actually enforced. So the treated group is going to be a group of influencers in Germany, and the untreated group, so the comparison group, is going to be the Spanish influencer market, which is, they argue, one of the least regulated influencer markets, at least in Europe. They're going to collect data from 6,000 local influencers in each country. So what they're trying to be careful of is making sure that the influencer doesn't have reach across multiple countries and kind of contaminate any of the empirics they want to do. So they're going to pick medium scale or small scale influencers that are kind of specific to the country, either Germany or Spain. So this graph that they put in the paper looks at how the amount of posts that are disclosed as advertising varies over time. The vertical line here is the first one is the introduction of the ad disclosure regulation. The second line is, I think, the first enforcement of a large fine. Like the law got introduced and we're credibly enforcing it as a German government. So what do we see? Hopefully we see that there's some kind of parallel trend idea in the kind of pre-treatment period. We might have to wave our hands a little bit here. I'm not totally sure that that's totally a parallel trend assumption being satisfied. And then after treatment, what we see is an even bigger uptick in the amount of posts disclosed as advertising in Germany compared to Spain, which is remaining relatively constant. So what my concern might be here when I look at this graph, as someone who didn't write the paper, is that there was this kind of rising number of ad disclosures in Germany that we don't really see in Spain. So this parallel trends assumption, might be a little nervous about that going forward. But let's look at the results kind of assuming parallel trends is okay. Before I do that, how do they try and detect disclosure? So they put up these 4 images from the Jenners. I think it's all from Kylie Jenner, where they put up some kind of influencer kind of posts where they're advertising a product, and whether it's sponsored and whether they disclose, whether Kylie Jenner just kind of discloses that it's an ad or not. And they kind of talk about these 4 situations. It's clear that it's sponsored and she discloses that it's sponsored. There's no sponsor, there's no disclosure, and kind of all different combinations of that. This is going to be a problem they're going to face in their data. And what they're going to do is they're going to build a bunch of machine learning models to try and predict whether a post has disclosure or not. And what they're going to find is they can do that with about 80% accuracy or 70% accuracy. I can't remember the exact number in the paper. So then, this might be it. Nope. So then what they're going to look at is disclosure is going to be introduced. We're going to do a diff and diff. So the coefficient of interest is going to be that on Germany times regulation period. And the first thing they want to look at is across different classification methods. So they just want to look at, no matter how I try to classify this as ad or ad disclosure or non-ad disclosure. So that was difficult for them in their paper. We see that once the regulation period starts, that there's a kick, there's a rise in the amount of sponsored ad disclosures. And it looks like something along the lines of a 3% increase, if we take the first estimate seriously. Perfect. So ad disclosure laws, more people, more influencers saying this is an ad. Then there's some more tables that do similar things. Then we get to the table lower down, which in a copy of the paper that I had was table 8. What is the effect of these regulations? So now people are disclosing that this is an ad. How does that affect consumer engagement with influencer posts? And I kind of show that there's a decrease in engagement across all metrics. So they find that there's less likes. So on average, the number of likes is decreasing by 490 or 480, which is quite a large decrease in number of likes. I think in the paper, they quantify that as relative to the average number of likes that these guys get. I think it's a 40 to 50% decrease in the number of likes. There's a substantial decrease in the amount of comments, and there's a substantial decrease in the number of followers of these guys as well. So they're kind of not getting that growth once it's kind of clear these guys are doing some advertising. This is important, right? So we've added regulation to a market, and it's decreased consumer engagement with influencers. So in a way, influencers might be having kind of less reach now that kind of they know it's an ad. So consumers are perceiving something differently. Oh my God, this guy's just advertising. It's not authentic per se. Well, I don't want to engage with it. This guy and this product pair anymore. I'm not going to engage with the post. What does this suggest? I'm going to make a big statement here that I don't think is in the paper, but I think I would immediately go, okay, we need to think about this now. That the more we regulate this market, the less important influencers are going to become, because it's just going to look like another kind of ad, right? It's going to look like a firm-sponsored TV ad, except it's no longer a TV ad on like CBS or some local TV station. It's on some guy who I follow's channel, right? His Instagram feed. So one potential interesting thing to think about going forward would be, are we going to see kind of a decline as regulations increase in the importance of influencers in engaging consumers with products, because consumers are going to increasingly see that these posts are just ads, right? Are we just going to start viewing a lot of influencer posts truly as ads, not as authentic kind of reviews or comments or whatever it might be about a product. This is something I think will be interesting to watch over time. Is my main takeaway from that paper is, okay, regulation comes in, consumers kind of respond to it and go, ooh, okay, ads, not so into ads, decrease engagement with those kind of posts. If that's going on, then campaigns who are kind of hiring these influencers to make these posts, it'll be interesting to see if they want to continue kind of their large ramp up in the scale of influencer ads they're doing, or they're going to have to revisit or redesign kind of the way that this market and the way these interactions might go forward.